Hi, and welcome to Design Your Dream Prom Dress Contest and our second webinar. The lucky winner gets to go with me to New York and work with me designing their dream prom dress. All of the contest rules will be available at the website asg.org as well as attitudecouture.com and the website featuring the prom dress contest, designyourdreampromdress.com. This is what the website looks like. This is the website for the contest, and the URL is designyourdreampromdress.com. It's at the bottom, so you can copy it down or visit the webinar again to get the information. I'm so excited to introduce to you, in conjunction with the American Sewing Guild, Your Dream Prom Dress Contest. Together, in the next few months, all of us will work on new ideas for prom. If you're like me and you're sick of seeing the same old prom dresses over and over again every year, now is your chance to rock the prom world. Hi, and welcome tonight. This is me. I am Robin Spint, and I am the owner and designer of Attitude Couture. I have been sewing since I was 13 years old. I had to make all of my own clothes because I was almost 6 feet tall, I still am, and only weighed, at that time, 99 pounds. I wish that were true today, but it's not. So if I didn't sew, I didn't have any clothes to wear. After art school, I became a successful jewelry designer. Even then, I would wear clothes that I made to all the shows that I attended. Unfortunately, after a car accident in 1992, I had to find something else to do. I went back to school and got a master's degree in business. After many years of being in school and teaching, I began an import business. This taught me how to work with sewing factories overseas and get my dresses made into samples. From that, I created Attitude Couture. I hope you'll go visit my website and look at my dresses. As a lifelong sewing enthusiast, it's been my dream to be a clothing designer. My dream finally came true when I met a gentleman who was selling dresses that were manufactured in China. We started Crush by R.J. Formals together 5 years ago. My former partner and I have since parted ways, but Attitude Couture lives on and is now providing me an opportunity to share my experience with other dreamers. And those other dreamers are you! Tonight, we're going to talk about manufacturing costs. And I know at the outset, this seems like a very boring concept about money and how much things cost, but it's very important to the design process. And it's important that you understand how much it costs to produce a dress. Because if you design a dress for me that costs $1,000 to produce, I already know no one will buy that dress. So tonight is part 2. I want to welcome those of you who were here last time back, and those of you who are new, welcome. And tonight we're going to work on the business side of design. So when I start to think about a dress, I begin thinking and I begin dreaming and I begin fantasizing, and I'm always looking around at things for ideas, and I somehow have to get my idea down onto paper. I'm lucky because I went to art school. I know how to draw fairly well. That might not be the case in your case, but that's okay. There are other tools you can use, such as Photoshop, or you can take a dress and take a Xerox machine and cut off the top and glue the bottom on. However you need to express your ideas, that's up to you. So I begin my process thinking of an idea or a vision, and I begin looking through magazines, websites, and ideas start fluttering into my head. And this one that you're looking at, I noticed a lot of the wedding dresses in the previous year when I was working on this line had a lot of netting on them. And I really like netting because it can cover up a lot of our problems with our physique. For example, if you have maybe your arms aren't as muscular as you'd like them to be, if you use netting in your design, it can cover up some of those bad parts of your physique. So this was the drawing that I actually sent to China. Uh-oh, and this is what I got. So, if you remember from the previous slide, the beading was in pink. I merely used that to set off the beading design. Unfortunately, my factory took it very literally, and when they showed me the sample, we had to rework the dress. They also didn't understand how the netting was supposed to work. And what you really can't tell in the picture very well is the netting on this dress is in white. Positively horrid, positively not my idea. So we spent a good hour, hour and a half on this one dress, really working on the design and what I wanted it to look like. And the good news is, this was my dream, and when I saw it, I almost started crying. I want you to meet Rhapsody. Rhapsody is a really pretty dress with a slit and a satin belt. She really came out gorgeous, and I was so happy I was able to communicate with the factory and get my idea fixed. Look how gorgeous she came out. This is the back of Rhapsody. What I particularly like about the back of this dress is the netting features. They put the lace appliques on the back, and so it creates the illusion of tattoos floating on her back. Since all of us have a bit of bad girl in us, let us not neglect ideas that might be a bad girl idea, because we know that a lot of girls want to have a little bit of edginess, not necessarily being bad, but edgy. Now we begin the idea about how a dress gets made. Whether you're sewing in your house or you're sewing in a factory, the first step is a pattern. So I send them the drawing, like you saw in the previous slide, and they make a pattern for the dress. There are 3 patterns made at this point. One for the dress, like a paper pattern you would buy from Simplicity, McCall's, or Vogue. This is the software that the factory uses to create and then scale each pattern to size. So they start with all samples in my factory are made in a size 6. And then if I order the dress after the sample, they have to rescale the pattern down to a 4 or a 2 or a 0 and scale them up to 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, and 18. And this is the software that allows them to do that. As I said, when they make the pattern, they make 3 patterns actually. They make a paper pattern and they make 2 beading patterns. This is an example of a beading pattern for the ornate beadwork, that will eventually be hand sewn on the dress. And then a working beading pattern with holes is transferred onto the dress. So what they do is they take this paper and then they make 2 copies of it, and then they have a little machine that pierces holes into this paper. And once they have the holes pierced into the paper, they lay that on top of the flat piece of fabric, and they take a chalk, like pouncing, like a little envelope that's filled with chalk dust, and they pounce that through the holes, and the pattern gets transferred onto the fabric. At that point, the dress is ready to beading. These are the actual bags of beads in the factory. And if you could picture this, this is a room about the size of a garage with shelf units in it, filled with bags of beads like this. When I saw that, I thought I had found the best chocolate factory ever. How yummy. Here you can see in this picture that the pattern has been transferred onto the fabric, and you can see the white lines and the beads being stitched onto the fabric. If you could see this in person, you would have your mind numbed by the speed at which these ladies do this. First of all, they start with a piece of thread that is 36 inches in length and doubled. And somehow, I don't know how they do it, they don't get any knots in the thread. And I asked them if they used beeswax, and they said they didn't. I know if I tried to bead with a 36-inch length piece of thread, I would have a big knotty mess. Then if you see in the top part of the picture, there are these things that look like cups. Those are actually the bra cups that they use to put in the dresses. They serge around the edges, and then they fill them with the beads. And the reason they use those is because they're able to take the needle and very quickly push it through the pile of beads and grab 3 to 5 beads very quickly. This works much better than using a flat pan, much the way we've learned to do beading here. They gather the beads on the needle, and up and down it goes almost with the speed of a sewing machine. Absolutely amazing. Now we're going to talk about how much it costs to manufacture a prom dress. So once I send my design over to the factory, they then have to calculate how much it's going to cost me, and I have to decide whether I can move forward with the dress. Each prom dress from size 0 to 18 requires a minimum of 5 yards of fabric. So for the first item that we see, we pay for the paper pattern, which is $10. I have to pay for one for every size. The fabric, which is 5 yards, times $5, which is $25. If the dress is not very ornate, just a very simple beading pattern, it's $5. Labor is about $10, and shipping is about $15 per dress. So my average cost for a very simple dress with very little beading is about $65. I can tell you that the lace dress I showed you in the beginning of the webinar is not $65. It's much more expensive than that because the lace was very expensive in the dress. This would be for a very simple chiffon dress with very little beading on it. In this picture, we can see an amazingly embroidered piece of wedding fabric. This is for a wedding dress, and you can see that they have stretched the fabric onto a frame, and before they're given any of the beads to bead the dress, the beads are all carefully weighed and measured so there's no waste. This will be on a wedding dress at some point. In this movie that you're about to see, it shows how the dresses are sewn. And it doesn't matter whether it's in China or here in America, all clothing are constructed the same way. The flat things are done first, like darts and zippers, and then they're passed off to the beading people, and then after the beads are applied, they come back to finish the full construction. The beading process on a simple dress takes about 2 hours, And on a more complicated dress where it's beaded from head to toe, it takes about 8 hours. The people who do this beading are very skilled and deft at this activity. After the dress is sewn together and finally put in its three-dimensional form, like we see it on the dress form here, it is dry cleaned to remove all sewing marks like we make for notches or to sew to this point where you make a dot or anything else like the beading designs that are stamped on the dress. The next step that the dress goes through is quality control. And this is probably the most important part of the whole process of the dress, because if the dress arrives here in the United States and it's damaged, I have a big problem because I can't fulfill my order, and now I have to wait 6 to 8 weeks for another dress. So when the dress is completed, the quality control person in the factory goes through and looks at every dress to make sure it's seamed correctly, the hems are correct, all the sewing was done right, and then each dress is taken through a metal detector and they make sure there are no pins left in the dress. After they make sure that everything is right and it's good, then they pass it on to be packed. But the important thing to know is the person who is the quality control manager, if too many dresses slip by him and don't have the correct quality, this is the person who gets fired the most in the factory. Once the dresses have passed through quality control, they're ready to be packed and shipped to my warehouse. So each dress gets bagged and tagged, and on the tag it has my company name, the size, the style number, and the color, so that when I receive them, I can sort them in my warehouse and then repackage them to send them to the store. Because when I receive them, all of one style comes in one box and all of another style comes in another box, and sometimes, depending on how the order is, some styles are in different boxes. So they all need to be sorted and grouped together before we can begin shipping dresses. This is a great picture of the port of Hong Kong, and this is exactly what it looks like at night. All of the things that we have that get shipped from China go through this port. Doesn't matter whether it's prom dresses, light bulbs, anything that you get that's made in China goes through this port in Hong Kong. And when I receive dresses, there are 3 different ways that they can come to me, and this is all part of the cost of my dress as well. Depending on how many dresses I send, if I have 1,000 dresses or more, they can be put on a ship. If it's less than 1,000 dresses, it's not worth it to put it on a ship, and they're sent by FedEx or DHL. Ship, though, is the best way because it's the most cost-effective. The only problem is it takes 4 weeks to arrive in the port in California, in Long Beach, and then we have to wait another 4 to 5 days for the dresses to make it through customs, be put on a truck, and shipped here to Louisiana. This past prom season, every container that we received that came into port of our dresses was stopped by customs for an average of 3 days. They had to open each box and search it, which resulted in our dresses arriving a week later. Our retailers were not happy about this. Plus, for every day that those dresses remained in the customs office, I had to pay an additional $350 for each day that they were held by the customs officers. That did not make me happy. Okay, so You're thinking to yourself, well, I don't know. I was just in the store. I was looking at all these dresses, and one of the dresses was $400. But you're telling me it cost $65. How come my dress costs $400? Let us remember, this is the cost to manufacture a prom dress. There's also a lot of other costs in this number that you can't see. For example, I start working on my sketches now in October. I work for 6 months making sketches and designs and beading designs and developing pictures with other designers. So I don't get paid for any of that. I then have to travel to China, which is very expensive. I have to live there for anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks, eat every day, and you haven't lived until you've had Chinese food for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and stay in hotels. And then I have to have the dresses shipped here. This all adds to the final cost of the dress and is known in business as overhead. So now what we need to think about is, how does the store buy the dress and how much does that cost? And that's what this chart is all about. Again, these are costs that are put into the price of any garment that you buy, but these are specific to the prom business. So the first item you see says FOB, which stands for free on board. Even though it's called free on board, I think of it as freight on board because it costs me money. What this basically means is me, the buyer, Attitude Couture Prom, agrees to pay for any shipping charges that come from my factory in China to here in the United States. So Attitude Couture is the buyer, and we purchase freight plus the dress from the seller or the factory in China. Then I mark up each dress by 35% to cover many of my expenses. I pay my sales reps 10% for each dress that they sell. And for those of you who are mathematically minded, you would know that I made a mistake in this chart because 10% of 159 would really be 15, and I apologize for that. I then have to pay for advertising. Every year we advertise in Teen Prom or 17 Prom's Edition magazine. A 2-page ad in a magazine is $15,000. That's 15 with 3 zeros. And we did 4 pages, so each year we spent $30,000 on advertising. So I put a portion of that in each dress, and that's where the $20 comes from, not to mention using Facebook and all the other electronic gizmos. All of that requires time and people writing that stuff. Then there's postage and handling to send the dress to the store. I have administrative costs, the lady who answers the phone for me, the people who answer the phone and handle returns, the accounting, the bookkeeping. So then we arrive at what's called the landed costs, and that means when it arrives in my warehouse, how much it costs. And that number is $150.75, including my math error. So this really should be $152.75. And then I come up with a wholesale price, and the wholesale price, the store owners are accustomed to those numbers ending in a 9. So typically I would look at the landed cost of $150.75, and I typically add $20 to the middle number to arrive at a number. So really the final cost to the store for this dress would have been $179. So if I sell 5,000 dresses, I have sales of about $800,000. And then after I pay the factory and for the shipping and rent and my employees, I have a profit of about $100,000. Okay, so now you're out shopping with your girlfriends and you're all excited and you're holding up your dream prom dress at your favorite prom boutique or wedding boutique store. You're holding it up against yourself. You look in the mirror and you're like, this is the one. I know it. It looks fantastic on me. I'm going to be the queen of the prom. And then you look down at the price tag and you say, oh my God, but it's $450. I can't afford this. Well, how did we get $450 when Robin told us that the dress only cost me $65? Well, it didn't cost me $65. It cost me a lot more than that, and so then the wholesale cost of the dress is $159. And this is how the retail stores come up with the price that they charge you. They typically mark up a dress 2 times, 2.5 times, or 3 times, depending on the quality of their store. So I took the middle number, 2.5. So 159 times 2.5 is $397.50. Then they have overhead, rent, employees, phone, internet, and all that stuff. So they add $50 for that, and then they get an approximation price of $447.50. And since that's an odd retail number, they generally round it up or down to $450. And that's why your prom dress cost you $450 and not $159. Does that make sense? Okay. When a retailer comes to me, they want to know what are my price points. And they'll walk in my booth and they'll say, what are your price points? And I'll say, they vary. Typically for prom dresses, including short and long silhouettes, they're between $100 and $250 wholesale. That's equal to a retail price of $200 to $500. When you double the price of something, it's called keystoning. So if something costs $100 to be purchased by a store, they keystone it by half, which would make it $200. Some store owners triple the price. So that's it for tonight's webinar. I hope you enjoyed yourselves, and even though the business of fashion can be boring, it's important that you understand it as part of the design process. Because as you submit your dresses and your ideas, if you submit a dress to me that's going to cost $4,000 to make, I can't even begin to think of that in a pile that I could even consider, because I already know that I can't sell a dress in my market for that much money. So I really want you to think through as you're doing your sketches, not to get too involved and with too much beading and too much feathers and too much applique, because the dress will become too expensive. Also, I had a young student, I would say, working for me this summer who was helping me with my designs, and he kept bringing me these dresses and they were beautiful, but the problem is I knew they couldn't be made for less than $500 or $600, and I knew there was no way I could sell them. In our next webinar, I'd like to discuss fashion research and how to think about trends, fit, and silhouettes. Please remember that if you have any questions, you can always email me at info@attitudecouture.com, and I'll be happy to help you. Please also remember that all the pictures are the property of Attitude Couture, and may not be used for anything without express permission from me. Okay, does anybody have any questions? Just type your question in the box provided on the webinar panel, and I'll be happy to answer you.
I have a question for you, Robin. This is Ramona,
Okay.
for those of you that don't know me. Why are the dresses held in customs for those extra days?
Well, sometimes, unfortunately, people do bad things and put things in with other things that they shouldn't have. Like last year, there was a big problem. This is going to sound really gross when I tell you this. They were hiding snakes, and they were getting into our country because they were hiding them in other things they were importing, like furniture. Oftentimes people hide drugs and other illegal things, and so if they suspect that there could be something illegal in the box, the customs officers have to open the boxes and go through them before they'll allow them to pass through customs. If they cite your merchandise, there's nothing you can do. You can't argue with them because it's a legal thing. They're like police, and you have to let them search the things. So I don't know if it's from where a factory was from or, you know, what the circumstances was, but all of our dresses last year, each and every one of them, when they made it to the customs stop, were held. Each time we had like dresses come in big bulk,
Wow.
with more than 1,000 pieces.
All right, Chelsea has a question. She said, I missed the first webinar last month. Is there any way to view it on the American Sewing Guild website? Yes, I believe our IT lady is working on finalizing that part of the website. And also, I believe it's on YouTube, and we have a link on the asg.org homepage, upper left-hand corner for Facebook and all that, and she put a YouTube icon up there. So I believe I saw it on YouTube as well. Any other questions? That was a good question.
That's a very good question, Chelsea.
Okay, it doesn't look like there's any other questions, Robin.
Okay. Remember, you can find all the information you need at asg.org's website and at designyourdreampromdress.com. Our lucky winner gets to come with me to New York next year for Prom and Bridal Market that'll be for 2014. This will be in October 2014, and it will be for Bridal and Prom 2015. I've just returned from New York, and it was really a fabulous show, and I really had a great time, and I could certainly use some help in my booth next year. See you at the next webinar, and I look forward to all your sketches and your ideas as we work together to come up with a new face for prom. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to contact me. Thanks very much, and don't forget to visit designyourdreampromdress.com. Good night. Bye.